Hello, my name is Christy, editor, beta reader, ghostwriter. And today I want to talk about the difference between effective narration versus emotionally unengaging narration. This is obviously a highly complex topic that cannot be covered all at once. So today I want to continue something I have mentioned in my last video where I reviewed A Memory Called Empire by Arkady Martine, and which I've addressed in my community posts, narrative distance. Now, narrative distance is related to the distance between the reader and the point of view character. It refers to closeness of experience, that is, whether the reader is going through the character's experiences in tandem with them. The greater the narrative distance, the more it feels to a reader that they aren't in the character's head, but instead getting a report of the character's experiences via a third party, the narrator. There's a time and a place for all types of narrative distance, I would say, depending on what a writer is trying to convey, what mood or emotion or even pace they are going for. The more distance there is between the characters and the readers, the greater the emotional detachment will be. I want to illustrate this phenomenon by comparing snippets from a book I hold in very high regard to one I found rather lacking. The first book is The Drawing of the Three by Stephen King. It's the second book in the Dark Tower series, which, along with The Lord of the Rings, is my favorite book series of all time, until now at least. The counterexample will be from A Memory Called Empire, a book I did not hate, but that disappointed me. Okay, I will not go into too much detail, but the main plot of The Dark Tower revolves around protagonist Roland of Gilead, a gunslinger of a fallen world who pursues an enemy wizard and wants to find the axis that holds aloft all realities, the Dark Tower. Roland's quest gets really complicated and metaphysical at times, and the whole thing is amazing. I love these novels so much. I can't even put it into words. Now, in the second book, the one we're taking a peek at here, Roland finds a series of doors on a beach that allow him to enter the minds of people in a different reality and during different time periods. In our case, he gets inside the head of a heroin addict called Eddie Dean, who is trying to smuggle drugs into New York. The people who put him up to this have taken his brother hostage. Now, Roland needs to get Eddie through customs and he needs to avoid him getting caught. The reasons for why Eddie, whom Roland calls the prisoner, is so important don't matter right now, just that the protagonist and point of view character, Roland, is seeing Eddie's world for the first time and filtering his experience through the lens of someone who grew up in a crumbling post apocalyptic world where magic exists and time is malleable. It's a whole thing. Also, Roland is suffering from sepsis because giant lobsters clawed off a few of his fingers and he needs antibiotics. It makes sense in context. Anyway, here's the passage I want to show you. Okay. He would give his drug to his brother, who would in turn give it to a man named Balazar. The deal would be complete when Balazar traded them the kind of drug they took for this one, if, that was, the prisoner was able to correctly perform a ritual unknown to the gunslinger. And a world as strange as this must of necessity have many strange rituals. It was called clearing the customs. Now, Roland doesn't know airports or what customs are. He's heard this term, clearing the customs, and automatically interprets it as something that makes sense given his biography, a semi religious, highly choreographed ritual that is a symbol of respect to the territory one is entering. That is why he capitalizes it. We, the readers, don't need to be told this explicitly. There is no Roland was from a different world and did not quite understand how airports worked in Eddie Dean's New York. But because he wasn't the type to muse on what he didn't immediately need, he didn't waste time with awe and wonder and just applied rational thinking. Thinking he needed to solve the current conundrum. That is, getting Eddie through this predicament and out of the path of danger. That was the only thing that mattered right now. Anything else would have to wait. Because what I just did, that's telling, not showing. I am using a third person narrator to explain to the audience what's going on in Roland's head. I am not showing it directly. That is great narrative distance. It's not terrible, but in my opinion, this kind of writing style spells boredom. I mean, it's okay to be narratively distant here and there, but not during the length of the book. The effect is that readers fail to emotionally engage with the point of view characters, and I personally don't find this appealing. Now, this is Roland going through what he thinks the clearing of customs might be so he can devise a plan to get Eddie through it unscathed. There might be some sort of oracle who might be consulted in the cases of people who seem suspicious. Otherwise, Roland gleaned, the clearing ceremony would be simplicity itself, as crossing a friendly border was in his own world. One made the sign of fealty to that king's monarch, a simple token gesture, and was allowed to pass. See, we are in Roland's head as he interprets what he's experiencing through the lens of his cultural background and his biography. The scene is descriptive, yes, but it also reveals a lot about our main character and how he views the world he's getting to know. We learn about his pragmatism, his practical approach to solving problems, but also his cultural expectations. In this scene, we learn that Roland is not someone who stares in wonder at things unknown. He faces challenges head on and doesn't daydream or ask abstract questions of the stars, so to speak. Say what you want about Stephen King, but this kind of writing is engaging because it combines exposition with action and characterization. The world is built as the story unfolds and the characters live through it. I love the Dark Tower so much. Anyway, on to examples of how not to do it. A Memory Called Empire by Arkady Martine has 44 instances of she felt. My problem with this book is that the entire thing is written like this. The author never manages to reduce the narrative distance, and you can tell that sometimes she tries. But the narration never veers off from book report mode. It's always someone narrating events after the fact, and I couldn't feel anything for the protagonist, Mahit. Take this snippet from pages 114 and 115 of my Kindle edition. First, that hurt to think about, in a way Mahit hadn't expected, a sort of loss she hadn't thought to expect, to go along with missing the Iskander she did know. A page later, during the same scene, we have, but all the same, she wished she could have met the Iskander who had been embodied here, whose corpse she had been presented with. And she missed home, missed planet rise above the station, and being clever and ambitious and not responsible yet. This is peak telling versus showing. This is a scene where Mahit is in the heart of a hostile empire, dealing with the murder of her predecessor, dealing with neurological issues and assassination attempts, as well as a plot to invade her home. She's supposed to be overwhelmed and wistful about her lost innocence. Instead, we get an emotionless report talking about someone's experiences after they're over. It's a hand me down account of a memory, and it doesn't allow the readers to feel what Mahit is feeling. We can reduce the narrative distance while still keeping the slow tone and pace. How about what was the name for that cold hollowness deep in her gut, that odd compulsion to curl up and descend into oblivion? She'd never dive into this world the way Iskander had. Now that he was gone, could she even be whole again? At home, unreachable now, she would sneak off to one of the hatches and admire planet rise above the station. Beyond all the hardships and bulkheads, there was an expanse of beauty and wonder just waiting for her. Now, eternity had died, leaving a pile of cold ashes where her fervour had once been. We now know something about Mahit's feelings, about how she used to look at the world and what changed, about her surroundings and her cultural lens, all without spelling it out directly. We know that she's someone who experiences great emotional heights and lows, and whose youthful enthusiasm has been crushed by harsh reality. She felt, she missed, she was sad. Those are all narratively distant and, in my humble opinion, rather boring. And that's the main issue with A Memory Called Empire. Mainly because of this writing style, I don't actually have a clear picture of Mahit as a person. Not every book needs to be a deep character study, but too much reporting after the fact instead of allowing the readers to feel alongside the characters is unengaging and dull. And that's the real crux of showing versus telling. I would go so far as to refrain from using show, don't tell as writing advice because it's often overused and doesn't really help explain to writers what it looks like in practice. The concept of narrative distance is much more useful, in my opinion, especially because it's not really about good versus bad, but more about understanding what I, as a writer, want to convey with a particular scene. I hope that was helpful. In the near future, I want to contrast a snippet from another book I love, this time from a different genre, with one from a book I really, really hate. Anyway, thank you so much for indulging me, and I hope to see you soon.